going to go ahead and start. I see that there are few more people checking in, so please take your time and take your seats after you're done. But for the sake of time, we're just going to go ahead right into it. I'm going to make a few announcements. My name is Natalia Bailey. I'm a co-chair of Charleston Young Society, and we have our other co-chair, Gina Appleby, sitting here in the first row. Gina, but I'm going to start with some announcements. We have some food, we have some snacks and some water and some hot tea on the left of me. So please feel free to grab some right now or during the intermission that we will have around 6 p.m. We have restrooms to the right of me if you just continue down that hallway. A few more things. We have a few more events coming up. Sorry, I'm trying to get this mic working. Keep sliding down. We have 2 more events left in the season, which has been a pretty productive season for us. A lot of great speakers who we're lucky to welcome here. And next speaker event will be March 14th. We will have a local presenter. His name is Juan Pablo Galindo, and he will have a presentation on the topic Meeting the Self, Ketamine-Assisted Psychotherapy and Jungian Path. Should be a very interesting presentation. Then April 11th, we have another local speaker. Her name is Debbie Donovan. She's a certified labyrinth facilitator, and she will talk about exploring the labyrinth as a transformation, walking the talk. That's, as a reminder, every second Saturday of the month until we go on summer break. We also have Jungian Cafe every last Sunday of the month, with one exception. Next meeting will be March 8th. We meet at Kudu, which is a coffee shop downtown, and we meet at 4 p.m. We have a pretty solid group of people who've been joining us for many months at this point. We pick topics. Gina and myself run this group. We provide some resources, so if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, please let us know. We will add you, and you will start receiving these resources as well, and you're all welcome to join us, obviously. As always, we're looking for volunteers for Charleston Young Society. We have a sign-in sheet at the welcome table, so if you feel like contributing more to our little group and its success, please consider becoming one of the volunteers. Another important announcement here that came up very recently, we have an opportunity for collaboration with another local organization, which is called the Sophia Institute. A lot of you are probably familiar with it. And they will have a very interesting workshop called Stoking the Creative Fires with Phil Cosino. And it's designed to inspire if you are stuck, nudge if you feel anxiety about what to actually create, and reassure you how vital it is to complete what you have begun, because the world is longing for your deepest and clearest creativity. This event will take place at the end of February, which is February 27th and 28th, Friday night and Saturday afternoon. If you're willing to join us, we again are co-sponsors of this event, so we'd like to see some of you in the audience as well. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton to Scott Morgan, our board member, and he will announce our guest speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. I would like to start with a quote from Dr. Wright's new book, one of several shared with me by Natalia, who has read and enjoyed the book and provided me with some quotes. Psychologically, we birth our gods in an effort to understand ourselves and our place and purpose in the mysterious universe. Jerry R. Wright, Doctor of Ministry, is a Jungian analyst who lives in Flat Rock, North Carolina. He is a senior training analyst with the Interregional Society of Jungian Analysts, a retreat leader, teacher, and author. Jerry is the author of the recently published Welcoming Our Gods Back Home, the Wisdom of Psychological Mysticism, which is the 3rd volume in his trilogy, Jungian Psychology and the Future of Our Species. His first 2 books are Reimagining God and Religion, Essays for the Psychologically Minded, and A Mystical Path Less Traveled, a Jungian Psychological Perspective. And Jerry has both of those for sale, the Welcoming Our Gods Back Home and A Mystical Path Less Traveled are in stock today. His primary professional passion includes the application of the insights of Jungian psychology to human endeavors, including religion and spirituality, politics, and care of the earth. Dr. Wright has led pilgrimages to sacred places around the world, including Ireland, India, Africa, Peru, Machu Picchu, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Greece, and numerous pilgrimages to his favorite thin place, Iona, Scotland. Jerry's primary hobbies include hiking the beautiful trails in western North Carolina, traveling, gardening, and playing with his canine companion, Muffin.
Most important thing.
Yeah, most important thing. And as I said, Jerry's books are available for sale. Jerry's friend Barbara will be facilitating sales in the back, at the table in the back. He will be signing books after the talk. And if anyone needs continuing education credits, please complete the brief survey at the welcome table before you leave. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Scott. It's always unnerving to hear about one. But thank you. That was very generous. And thank you all for the invitation, for all the preparations that go into these kinds of events. Natalia, John, Shannon, Amy, all the people who set up, etc. So I was here 6 years ago. I was reminded of, I think it was Emerson, Peter mentioned Emerson briefly just a moment ago, who had a way of greeting old friends with some version of, what has become clear to you since we last met? So I pondered that question, what has become clear to me, or clearer to me, since we last met 6 years ago? And one thing that has become clearer to me is the urgency of what we're talking about tonight. Because my mantra for probably the last half of my life, but for the last 10 years anyway, in terms of writing, has been some version of, as long as our gods, our deities and devils, as long as our deities and devils are perceived to be beyond the physical world, in a metaphysical domain, outside the human psyche, we will continue to do great harm to ourselves, to each other, and to our nest. So to welcome our gods back home implies that they have been somewhere else, and our task is to welcome them back to the human psyche and imagination where they were birthed. That's the case I'm making these days, and that's what I'll be talking about tonight. Now, 6 years ago, I did talk about reimagining God and religion. That was the first book. And if some of you were here then, or if you've read anything I've written, you will realize that I have had an obsession with God and religion all of my remembered life, and especially in the last half of my life. And it's an obsession that I've been trying to treat in various ways. I got a lot of education. I had a lot of psychoanalysis, read a lot of books, trying to get over this obsession with God and religion, and nothing has happened. In fact, when I got involved in Jungian analysis, it made it worse, thankfully. So, borrowing a phrase from Jung, my obsession with God and religion all these years, I think, has served me well. It's my creative illness, is what I like to refer to. I'm going to quickly look over my shoulder to talk about some of my searching and wrestling with what we have named gods, goddesses, and God. And I'd like to do that with a poem. This poem will summarize just about everything that I have to say about God. And then we're going to move into a new kind of story that I think is evolving, developing, and any contribution I have to that particular story. So the poem is entitled God. And you'll see that it's a way of reflecting deeply, I think, on the mystery that we have named God over 200,000 years. And we have yet to come up with a God image, I think, that is sufficient. So we need to keep imagining. I like to think of poems as containing round words that hold multiple meanings. I think of poems as verbal bridges that connect opposites, and also give birth to paradox and irony and holy contradictions. Actually, poems may be our best language to talk about the unnameable, the unspeakable. Here's a poem entitled God. There is no God except the experience of God. So says Sufi mystical wisdom. Wisdom sorely needed in a time when the old deities in the top rung of a three-tiered universe have either died or retired, leaving heaven-hungry humans clinging to dogmatic life rafts barely afloat in a turbulent institutional sea. We could spend all night talking on that particular paragraph. What sounds like bad news portends good news for those who no longer reside in that collapsed universe, and for those who can no longer abide a supernatural being who has a favorite tribe and only one son guarding the salvation gate, creating an illusory shortage of divine water, requiring fences and secret creedal codes, generating competition and division and terror, and more weapons to protect one's God and stories deemed sacred. As long as our deities are supernatural beings occupying an external metaphysical home and intervening for our religious tribe, we will continue to do great harm to our others, ourselves, and our earth home, while doing a victory dance in sanctuary, sports field, or political hall, proclaiming we are number one, while losers weep and plan the next inevitable battle. We continue to spill blood over the stories we tell ourselves about the gods we have birthed and are obliged to defend, excusing our cycles of violence and terror while praying God's will be done, or God bless America, or Allahu Akbar, before lying down for fitful sleep. We will to our children our unwillingness to face our human fears disguised as faith, their inheritance, our unlived life. Who will have the uncommon courage to speak common sense to our common delusions of external magical gods and magical books? How long will we export the responsibility for our difficult human choices to a remote deity, or to a human pope, or to a dusty paper pope created by the Bronze Age male psyche? Was the reduction of the many gods and goddesses to one supernatural male, revelation from heaven's heights, or eruption from the human depths of 2 million-year-old fears of shortages of God goodies? When will we accept that all of our gods and goddesses are necessary symbols or metaphors, the supernatural, theistic, all-male God of Abraham being no exception? How else can we explain so many gods over so many years for so many peoples? When the experience of God, when the experiences of God are elevated as the mystical norm, the remote gods will be free to incarnate not once, as rumored, but everywhere and every when. Every bush and every person ablaze with dazzling, unquenchable light, the light of the world no longer hidden under a bushel, as the mystical teacher proposed. Why have we kept our gods so remote for so long, and made our religions so difficult and for so few? Would it not be more human and humane and divine to live as if we are the gods we have created or birthed, and the devils we have shunned? Or is that asking too much of our religious pathology and our adolescence as a species? The last paragraph. This author is often accused of using passionate, even angry words when addressing the holy business of religion. Guilty as charged, Your Honor, having been complicit in promoting external, supernatural, literal gods, showing favor to some and shunning others, and presiding over religious corporations too big to fail. May these words, symbols, metaphors, and poems be partial penance for my necessary and unnecessary sins. So, that summarizes a lot of years of re-examining my own tradition and re-examining a tradition that I think supports a toxic behavior. Many people continue to find the monotheistic myth, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, many still find the monotheistic myth helpful, inspiring, but many others have no longer find that old myth helpful. And even if it's been helpful to some, if it's held without some kind of psychological reflection, I think in general it supports toxicity. That's my mantra these days. So that's a look over the shoulder. A year ago, I had a dream. It was the day after Groundhog Day, which was, a couple of weeks ago. And that dream put me on to writing this third book, Welcoming Our Gods Back Home. And essentially in the dream, all of a sudden I'm with a group of people like this, and some of my, I think the leader of the group is somewhere back to my left, back here, a combination of some mentors, analysts, etc. And suddenly I feel compelled to speak, and I stand up and say some version of, many people think that the two books that I have authored are too radical and too far out. But I declare in the dream, I don't think they're radical enough. And I declare that I need to write one more book that talks about what we are discovering, that it is we who birth all of our gods, rather than being birthed by them. And so that's what the new book is about. And as started writing this last book, I knew that if I was going to complete it, then I would need to speak first of all to the political elephant in the room. And so the first chapter is entitled Speaking to the Political Elephant in the Room. And I'd like to say what I mean by that, because that political elephant is always in our faces every day. And we need to address it. We can't look away. I was saying some version of what I'm about to say to one of you already, that it is my experience, and it is my experience with other people, that we're being traumatized many, many times every day. We're being traumatized. And it is having its effect on us long term. And I think it's important that we know that we're being traumatized so that we can take some steps to remedy that. Now, spoiler alert, it may be that some of my particular religious and political perspectives you will find offensive. And if you do, just register the feeling. Don't leave. Because if you stay long enough, I will probably offend the other half of the group. At this stage in my life, I find myself speaking rather boldly. I don't have authorities that I have to report to. I'm coming to the end of my career, the whole deal. And I believe passionately what I'm talking about. We are in an urgent situation. We need to find words to express that. But I'm also, as well as I know myself, I'm also an equal opportunity. I'm not only an equal opportunity offender, I'm an equal opportunity listener. And I love to engage in conversations with people. And I like to converse with people who think differently. And sometimes I provoke my neighbors to talk to me when they don't prefer to talk to me. I have a neighbor 2 houses down, quick story. His name is George. And so George and I have had for the last 6 years, we've had some really tough conversations. He's a very conservative religious person. But for the last 2 years, he has refused to talk to me about anything of substance. So I'm out in my yard working. This was 3 months ago now, 4 months ago. And I'm sweating and dirty and working. And George lives 2 houses down. There's an open lot between us. So he's sitting on his deck. And he's listening to some podcast. And I know what he's listening to because he tells me. And so I'm feeling kind of rambunctious that day. And I say, "Hey, George, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." I said, "George, you know, there was a time when Christians would help their neighbors do their work. They would see their neighbors out in the yard, and they would come over and help. But I guess they're spending so much time making America great again that they don't help their neighbors anymore." Well, obviously, what I'm doing, I'm just provoking him for conversation, and it worked. So we spent about 30 minutes screaming at each other. I'm not recommending this style of conversation, but I'm telling you that it's important that we find ways to converse, even if we have to provoke each other, as long as you respect what the person is saying and trying to understand what they're saying. It's urgent. We must. At least that's my particular perspective. So that's a long-winded way of saying I may offend you today, but listen carefully and let me know. I would like to hear your perspectives, and especially if they differ from where I'm coming from. So it's obvious in my language that we are experiencing a dark night of the soul. I'd like to cast it that way because it's good language, and And I think the darkness has thickened since the 2024 United States presidential election. As I've already indicated, our collective souls are suffering and our concerns are mounting. And to address that, I'd like to draw on language of depth psychology, on the language of soul. Because for me, it's the best language to address the situation that we're in. So, shortly after the election, I found myself writing furiously every morning. My sleep cycle for the last many years now has been, I'm up at 4 a.m. writing, and that's a good pattern for me. I like that. My canine companion wakes me up too. And so for weeks I wrote furiously about what I was entitled at that time the Trump cult. And I think it is an apt title. I think it's an accurate title, because cults form around authoritarian leaders who rule with an iron fist, who garner power for self-interest and narcissistic needs, who promise physical and monetary safety at any cost, and who show little concern for anyone outside the cult. Cult leaders have little or no capacity for empathy. They demand absolute loyalty, and dissenters risk being expelled or replaced, or to suffer legal prosecution, of course. I was, and I remain concerned about the religious nature of the Trump cult. That's where I go. It's the religious nature of the cult, who, that cult assumes divine authority, validation, and power. Trump hijacked various large swaths of Christian evangelicals by pretending to be interested in religion. And his public display of holding a Bible in front of a Washington, D.C. cathedral, and his antic publishing and selling his own version of the Bible, I have my own version back there, were laughable except to those who fell for the carnival trick. Of course, he has no interest in religion, except he wanted the support of conservative Christians to support his conservative agenda. So I spend time in this particular first chapter talking about the danger of what's happening to us and casting it as a religious cult. Now, the hopeful thing about this for me is that the reign of Donald Trump will end. And what those of us who see the destruction that's going on needs to be about is to continue to ready ourselves to rebuild something that fits better with our species and our humanity. So we have work to do, even as we find ways to critique Donald Trump and the Trump cult. So I found myself really caught up with this notion of the Trump cult. And the writing was going well. I felt pretty brilliant, actually. I thought this is really going to be a great essay, and especially for my liberal friends, they will really like this. One morning after a night of disturbing dreams, I awoke with the question, will your essay provide more light on our dangerous divisions, or simply more heat? Of course, I immediately knew the answer. And so reluctantly, I let go of my attachment to my brilliant essay while continuing to own that it had some validity. and obviously I haven't let go of it totally, because I think what I have said so far needs to be said and needs to be reflected even more deeply. I had to admit, though, that my own political party had been guilty of dangerous, even deadly policies, such as continuing to be the arms dealer of the world, while touting concerns for gun control at home. It's shameful what we do. Get so concerned about our gun violence in our schools and so on, and this is across the board. Most administrations continue to support arming the world. The inconsistency of that is shameful. I had to admit that my own political party, when the most recent one, while pretending not to be at war, while supplying our allies with billions of dollars worth of armaments, or deploring the barbaric acts of war crimes, such as beheadings, while supplying drones that blew people to bits. I had to admit that both political parties and their loyal followers, that is, each and all of us, are responsible for the darkness that surrounds us. We're all complicit, I think. I had to admit that it is easier to contribute to the dysfunction of politics than to the noble art of governing. Another specific example, Joe Biden ended any opportunity he had to speak, every speech, with God bless our troops. Now that's a worthy kind of sentiment, that to be supportive of our people and who give themselves for our country and so on. But to invoke God's name, God bless our troops, is just supporting that old mantra that somehow God supports our troops, our politics. We are still at a place as a species where war is apparently inevitable. But to invoke the name of the Almighty, to suggest that the Almighty is even interested in one country or another, or one set of soldiers, it's ridiculous. We don't give enough reflection to what we're doing. So I'm an equal opportunity offender when I'm talking about the way we have wed religion in politics. It's dangerous business. And it's time we looked at this whole idea of what and who our gods are and how they came to be. And again, I feel an urgency in this particular mission to speak some kind of depth psychological perspective to the mess we made out of our politics and our religions. What happened with me in that writing the article, I realized after I set aside my particular political perspective and tried to look at our divisions from a depth psychological perspective, what I realized was that our fears and our divisions that we have are not because we are so widely different. It's not because liberals and conservatives are so different. It's not because GOP and Democrats are so widely different. It's because we are so much alike. Because what's happening is that for those people like my friend George, there's a good outcome to that story, I'll tell you later. First of all, we're continuing to talk to each other, And we found some way to meet at a human level rather than political level, which was great. But it's not that George and I are so different, it's that I see in George an aspect of myself that I cannot abide. It's my shadow, and I'm his shadow. I even told him that at his door one time, thinking that my wisdom, he'll get this, I was telling that. He didn't get it. He said, "What's a shadow?" Our hope is that we learn to appreciate that very thin space between us and other people. Because it becomes a very powerful space that catches all of our projected contents. So it helps me to think. It's hopeful, actually. It's not that we're so different in our political and religious opinions. It's because we are so very close and we cannot abide seeing our shadow on our neighbors' faces, etc. So once I came to that realization, and I think it has some merit, I think it has a lot of merit actually, because what it picks up on is the whole notion of depth psychology and projection, which is not very well understood even by some Jungians. We have this notion that projection is something that I do, that I generate a projection, like my friend George. It's not that I projected my shadow into him. It's the self or the unconscious did the projecting to get my attention that he is an aspect of my own unconscious. That's the way projections work. Projections is a mystery of revelation. I talk about that in my first book, Reimagining God and Religion. Psychological projection is one of the least understood aspects of Jung's psychology, and one I think of the most important, because it's happening all the time. And if we can learn just a few kind of dynamics of psychological projections, it could make all of our conversations and all of our relationships a lot deeper and richer. Okay, so where do I want to go now? I had to talk about the political elephant in the room. So I think where I want to go now, Natalia, how much time I have?
20 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, I thought it was the 10th. Let me know when it's 6 o'clock. So I'd like to go to the title of Welcoming Our Gods Back Home. Perhaps the most important religious question of the 20th century was asked by a psychologist rather than a theologian or a philosopher. Pondering our species' many gods and goddesses and religions over the centuries, Jung asked rhetorically, where did the Greek gods and goddesses go when they left Mount Olympus? And his psychological answer was that they disappeared into the unconscious, and from there they have continued to influence consciousness in all manner of ways, including pathology and symptoms. Of course, he would go on to expand his notion that by proposing that the human psyche and imagination has been the birthplace of all of our gods and religions and their original metaphorical home. John Dowerly, who's a Canadian analyst, writes, as he considers Jung's massive corpus of writing, he writes, the recalling of the gods to their psychogenetic origin and the responsibility of dealing with it there is the defining characteristic and psychological culmination of Jung's psychology, and I believe that's true. I think Jung's greatest insight in the long run will be that our gods are not some kind of beings out there that then enters the physical world. It is we, the human psyche and imagination, out of our experience of the mysteries of the universe, called numinous experiences, we birth our gods and our goddesses. We have birthed the Abrahamic God. Now that's obviously a radical and heretical kind of notion, but until we find a way to own that, I think we will continue to do great harm to ourselves and each other. With our gods out there somewhere, and our religions based on that, our religion and our gods become a hiding place for the human shadow. And it's the human shadow that has us really in continuing bad shape. When Jung made this observation 100 years ago now about the birthplace of the gods and religions, we silently moved from a theological age to a psychological age. But few people have really noted that. It changes everything. It could change everything if we see that we, as a species, have birthed all of our deities and devils. Let me say it this way. How many of you have a cell phone? A smartphone of some sort? Yeah. You notice I didn't remind us to turn them off, because I was hoping one would go off. And then this would lead me to use this example that I'm getting ready to use. Every couple of weeks, like you, I'm sure, I get a notice on my smartphone that your iOS will be updated tonight. This has been going on now. I've had a smartphone how long? I don't know. But it was about 6 months ago when I realized I didn't know what was happening to my phone. I would wake up the next day and the phone would say, your iOS has been updated. Fine. Being technologically challenged, I had no idea what was being done. So I asked my kids, what does iOS mean? And they informed me that it means the internal operating system. The internal operating system is being updated. So that got me thinking about the things that I was interested in, depth psychology, religion, and so on. And I realized afresh that most ologies, most arenas of our life, medicine, astrophysics, biology, have regular iOS updates. But religion has not had an iOS update for more than 2,000 years, probably 4,000 years, of any substantial import. No internal operating system update. Jung took this challenge on when he spent his whole career looking at the internal operating system of the human psyche and also of the religious quest. And he put those two together in a way probably better than anybody has done before or since. The internal operating system of how psyche works and how religions work. So I've been making the case that we need to have a massive iOS religious update, and it begins with a new story. And the new story is this. It has been emerging now for about 100 years that we at least beginning with Jung and some of his colleagues and people, bright people around that time, began to imagine a new religious myth, a new story. And this new story is radically different from the old one. An analyst by the name of Max Zeller took a dream to Jung. You know this story. And Max Zeller was an American. He was from California, I think, and he went to converse with Jung primarily because he was wondering about the value of his own work as an analyst, of seeing, 15 or 20 people a week. And he was concerned that what kind of impact am I making by doing this work? Is it worthwhile? Is it going to have any long-standing sort of change on the way we humans relate to each other? So he was in Zurich, and the night before he returned to America, he had this dream, which he shared with Jung, and it was about a new kind of building that was being built. There were a lot of people working on it, and there were some major structures already built. And in the conversation, Jung supposed that it was the building of the new story, the new myth that many people were working on around the world. And he went on to say that it's going to take like 600 years probably before that new building is built. So we only have 500 more years. So it's a slow process. Human consciousness is very, very slow. It moves very slowly. But the new story, it will be completed. And our task is to help that story find its genesis. As I worked with this notion of the new story, what came to me at some point was a phrase called psychological mysticism. I had not read that phrase, I don't think, anywhere, but it caught my imagination, psychological mysticism. And when we come back in just a few minutes, I'm going to talk about my understanding of what psychological mysticism is and how it can be a part of the new story that is emerging and developing. And that's what I would like to do, in addition to engaging you in conversation about anything that you want to talk about related to anything that I've said. But more importantly, in situations like this, I trust that the most important conversations that have already gone on are the conversations that you're already having with your own interiority. It's not so important what I'm saying, it's what gets triggered in your own inner conversation. That's the most important thing you'll take away from tonight. And that's the most important thing that's our most important testament all the time. It's that conversation between conscious and unconscious. And to pay attention to that, because that's where the wisdom is to be found. And so if I have anything to suggest is to pay close attention to how that conversation gets activated, listening to something like this, or reading a book, or listening to the news, or whatever. What is a conversation going on within? And so, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about psychological mysticism, or anything else that you would like to talk about. Okay, all right. We're going to have, how long? 15 minutes? 15 minutes. Instructions? No?
Well, we have some food and some drinks, so please help yourself.
Okay, good. All right. share a couple more points. We are very well aware that our country, if not our world, is in a massive, major kind of transition. And we don't know where that's going. None of us knows where it's going. And it causes us all kinds of anxieties. This poem is entitled The City of More, M-O-R-E. Consult any Western atlas or GPS, or simply ask Siri, for directions to the city of More. A superhighway with soul left languishing in 2 miles of ditches for every mile of asphalt. Ditches filled with tear-stained adult toys touted by consumer priests as missing pieces to the happiness puzzles of vulnerable, love-longing, love-lonely humans. Surely more is always better, along with bigger and higher and being great again. How dare that mystical rabbi propose otherwise, that less is more, the first shall be last, and vice versa, and that the greatest are servants of all? How dare he? What was that homeless itinerant mystic smoking, declaring happy are the humble, poor in spirit peacemakers? What did he know? He who had only 12 followers on his Twitter account. Is the rapidly expanding city of More a shining light to the nations, or a flickering, diminishing candle on the edge of darkness? Is the rapidly expanding city of More a shining light to the nations, or a flickering, diminishing candle on the edge of darkness? Is the city of More a beacon for freedom and justice and equality for all, or only for the well-connected who can afford health care? Is the city of More capitalism's success, or cannibalism's delight, earth's honor, or soul's sorrow? Each of us is a judge and jury of one, considering our verdict in the city of More. Might it be that the expansion of soul requires less and less, and fewer, more subtraction than addition? One more poem. This poem concludes with my recognition that I fall into the complex that I think I know more about what's going on in the world than anybody else. I admit it. Sometimes I do. But listen carefully to what you know. This one's called I Know. Having taken leave of the back porch of the church and my ancestral religious tribe to scout out their possible futures and my uncertain one, my scouting report is dire, reminiscent of the old one when Moses sent out scouts to the new promised land and they brought back dire predictions. There is a new land just over the horizon, though not the one promised to Moses. Giants, nevertheless, ancient psychic fears and prejudices hidden beneath wishful God talk, ignored for centuries. We must stare them down eye to eye, the flesh-eating and earth-eating monsters standing in the path ahead for our sacred species. Scouting reports to the faithful evoke challenging questions about faith. This is the question I usually get in some form or another, wherever I dare to speak. Well, do you still believe in God? Have you lost your faith? The other one is about prayer. I'll address that one also. Very important. But the question about my belief in God and so on, and when I use the word God, what do I mean? Carefully considering my deep down knowing, birthed from rock solid experience and conviction, revised by divine doubts, my response echoes Jung, facing the same question near his end. I do not need to believe, I know. What did he know, that mystic in psychological garb? What do I know? What do you know? I know that I am, though I do not know where I was before, nor where or how I will be after. I know that life is full of mysteries, those we have named gods and goddesses no less so. I know that soul is as real as brain, the invisible as real as visible, that I am apprehended by uncomprehended powers and presences and plots and patterns who entangle me in the net of unknowing. I know that I'm being sought, though I do not see my pursuers, nor clearly their intent. That I'm also the one seeking the seekers, a mutual game of hide and seek, forever playing out in the meadows of my mind. I know that faith and trust are identical twins, often confused with beliefs that have other parentage. That beliefs breed mistrust of those who believe differently or not at all. I know that guarded beliefs shrink the imaginative soul, while trust releases the religious prisoners. That beliefs can change and must, lest religious word idols slay us all. I know that we birth our gods from numinous experiences not of our making. That we birth our gods who in turn birth us and hopefully save us from ourselves. And that devils are created likewise from dark shadowlands projected onto the faces of those we hate or fear. I know that all religious dogma is necessary subjective fiction, as anything that I would write is also subjective fiction. I know that all religious dogma is necessary subjective fiction, always needing a revised sequel. That all sacred texts are human words about the gods we birth, and that our God naming and religion making are necessary industries to employ the human imagination. I know that I know very little in the larger scheme of things, and that I remain a final puzzle to myself and others, prompting the conclusion to this trust-filled litany. But then, what do I know? And you? Psychological mysticism is a phrase that came to me as I imagined what is the new story that is emerging, and what might I and others contribute to this new story. It's essentially based on the new story that we now know cosmologically, biologically, psychologically, that we live in an interrelated, interconnected, interdependent web of being. That is now a fact that we know. And that our religious orientation, our political orientations must find a way to acknowledge that and live into that. It's going to take a while. It will happen eventually. But each of us has the mission and the possibility of living as if that's true. Psychological mysticism is based on that orientation to the way things are. Psychological mysticism is not about transcendence. Too much of our religions have been about transcendence, trying to get outside and above and away from the earth. Psychological mysticism is about descendance. It's about immanence. It's about a story based not on separation, but on connection. The old monotheistic myth is based on the idea of separation and dualism. It died, in my estimation, probably centuries ago now. It's been on a life support system for a while. But we have to find a way to bury that old myth, give it a good funeral, and a good eulogy, and move on. One of the chapters in this new book, I feel like I'm hawking books these days. I'm not getting rich off books, by the way. No, you don't get rich off books. Although I do enjoy, I write in order for my own meaning and my own salvation and so on. But one of the chapters in the book is one that I'm especially enjoy because it's called The Autopsy of God the Father. And when I was in midlife, 38 years old, I had a dream that I took to my first Jungian analyst, Eugene Monk. Some of you know of him. And the dream was short. I was standing by the graveside of my father in the casket. We were getting ready to bury my father. And there was this disembodied voice that said, you can't have a burial until there's an autopsy. And so I was 38 years old. My father had died 10 years before. My biological father had died 10 years before. I was a father to 3 kids. I was a spiritual father as a Presbyterian minister. And so my analysis focused on the complex of father and all those multiple meanings of that. And after some of that underbrush was sufficiently clear, I realized that the dream had a larger kind of meaning for me personally, and I think it turned out to be a collective dream. That what was anticipated there was the death of the Heavenly Father, the Father God. And for 45 years now, I have been doing a psychological autopsy on God the Father. And I finally wrote the autopsy report in this latest book, which I'm probably too happy about. Because it's rather freed me, finally to find words for my experience of the death of the patriarchy and the death of Father God. When I think about my God image as a young Baptist boy, as a anthropomorphic actual being hovering out there somewhere, when I think about the death of that image, here are some of the possibilities of the causes of his death. He died of a broken heart, watching his children fight over who was his favorite tribe. He was killed over and over again by friendly fire, caught in the middle of wars he never wanted, never condoned and never blessed. Or he was suffocated to death by rigid, airtight creeds and dogmas. Perhaps he died of loneliness, exiled far from the earth, from animals, and from humans he dearly loved. Maybe he died from caregivers' burnout, always being asked for favors and seldom asked what he wanted, how he was doing and feeling, and what his hopes for the world were. Or perhaps he died of natural causes as part of a universal life, death, rebirth cycle he created, a cycle applicable also to him and to future God images. Or even more likely, the symbol God died because it ceased to be a symbol and became a literal, personified male being rather than a connection to unnameable mysteries at the heart of being itself. Psychological mysticism attempts to talk about a new story that honors what I've just said about living in a unified, interdependent, interrelated web of being. And it's also about honoring that we humans come wired with both great creativity and great destruction and great evil. It brings good and evil down to where it needs to be addressed, to the human heart. It's not out there in beings who are orbiting the earth. We come wired with both of those capacities, great good and great creativity. Original sin held up part of the story for a number of centuries. Matthew Fox and others have done a superb job talking about original blessing. C.G. Jung advances the cause even more by reminding us that we have both original sin and original blessing. We have both the capacity for great creativity and compassion and great evil. It's that we haven't figured out yet how to deal with our evil, with our shadow side. I was thinking last evening, I drove over, what's the bridge that has all the beautiful, what's it called? Ravenel Bridge. I was thinking about, as I drove over that bridge in the late afternoon yesterday, of the creativity of our species. My goodness, we're so creative. But we're also so full of the capacity for evil. We haven't learned how to deal with our evil yet. We've tried a lot of different things. We've tried, sacrifices. We've tried creating one Savior and giving our sins to Jesus, etc. And but none of that has worked yet. We haven't found a way to deal with the human shadow. So let me stop talking and see what you want to say and talk about it. Ask. Yes?
How do you believe we should deal with the shadow?
Well, first of all, we have to have a way to think about it, and that's what I've been trying to lay out here. That there is a way to think about. We humans have both capacities. First of all, we have to have a way to put that in place, and then we are tasked psychologically with having to hold that tension between our capacity for great good and great compassion and great evil. We can't dispense of our shadow side or our evil side. We can't put it on other people. We can't make it a herd of scapegoats. We can't blame all of our shadow on other nations or the other political party. We have to hold that tension within ourselves. This is Jung's whole thing. We have to find a way to hold those opposites. That really is the way consciousness is birthed. You know, as we're able to do that. If we're able to, it's not that I don't have sometimes hateful and murderous kinds of feelings for George, because I do. But except for trying to, you know, get a rise out of him in my backyard, I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not even demean him. I have to hold that feeling and not act on the feeling. So it's not a matter of being pure. It's a matter of knowing I have the capacity to do a lot of damage, don't we? Cruel. Just think about the cruelty that we are witnessing because we have a cult figure and a cult following that places all of their projected evil onto people of different color. For instance, just so scapegoating does not work. We have to find a way to give up our scapegoating and dispensing of our evil somewhat. I like to say that the stuff that we repress and suppress that we don't like about ourselves, the unconscious does not have a digestive tract. It's not eliminated. It always will come back. And the thing that I have a primary difficulty I have with the evangelical community, of which I was born and reared in, so I have some right to talk about it. If it's a simple matter of giving our sins to Jesus and saying, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and then doing whatever hell you want to do, you know. Charlie Kirk, prime example. He could say, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and don't need to say any more. The danger of that whole movement is that it is a religious cult now, and is followers of Trump have said that, hold that to be true, and Trump himself sees that. He sees himself as the Messiah, as appointed by the one and only God. And he's afflicted with a particular kind of narcissism, malignant narcissism, by which he believes his own lies. Hitler had the same problem. Jung noted that. He believes his own lies. That's heavy. How did I get into that? I can't remember. Okay, other voices. Yes, back there.
I'm Jackie Monfessis. Thank you. I love the work of Jung. I love world myth. I'm Greek American. My family's from Ithaca. The psyche, the soul, is threaded in my blood. I spent a year in Greece on a rotary studying Eleusinian mysteries, and my favorite goddess is Persephone. That being said, is it possible to extend grace to those who believe not that they birthed the gods, but that God birthed them? To extend grace to those who do not experience God as an external, orbiting mythic being, but as a light within, personal relationship, a place of spiritual intimacy. I love all faiths, paths, and philosophies. I just had my heart pierced by the beautiful venerable Buddhist monks that I followed for 2 days in Ridgeway in Colombia. I'm nourished by this. Right now, you mentioned beheadings. Right now, my Orthodox brothers and sisters are being martyred in the Middle East. They are being beheaded. Is it possible to extend them the dignity of their beliefs even if we don't align with their beliefs? Can we give grace over someone else's life by softening our words of declaration?
well-framed response and question. I wish I had a brilliant response to it. What I would say is that the danger with the old religious frames is dualism. It sets things up where the difference between heaven and earth and men and women is dualistic, and we have to find. I think we have to find a way to get beyond that. I think I said, if I didn't say, I'll say it again. I think for people who, for whom old religious paradigms still provide meaning and purpose, and also the capacity for a life of compassion, passion and compassion, I don't think they need to give that up. However, it's the religious folks who have very little self-reflection about their particular religious frame, and they are promoting toxic kind of behavior because they're not reflective on what they're saying or what they're doing. You know, it's as silly as the athletes ending the ball game and giving credit to God for their victory. And we laugh at that, but that's what we've been doing collectively, you know, for 4,000, 6,000 years. Because that old myth declares that there's just one supreme being who chooses a particular tribe to be the favorite, who resources the tribe with text that cannot be changed. I mean, that is in the unconscious of the Western world and the Mideast world, and we keep offering blood sacrifices to that old God. Yeah, I'm not sure I responded well to your. I'm not sure I responded well enough.
You did, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. Yes.
I'm trying to understand the concept, and I've thought about this before, of our shadow side and what we do with it.
Yes.
And I'm trying to decide in my own life right now. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here had a difficult time with the election when Trump was elected. I have a lot of anger towards him, and I guess to people who voted too. I have to admit that, as well as this current situation, which to me right now is the huge issue: the immigrants, the ICE. And I started to go into a depression, and I had myself crazy trying to figure out how to get out of it. So one of the things that I decided I had to, and I don't know if this is addressing my shadow side, I guess, I had to do something. So I'm still finding my way through activism, I guess you'd say, but the one thing that has become so important to me, and I thought about, I don't know, I don't want to say dangerous, but it could be, that Charleston has an ICE hotline where if somebody thinks there's an ICE presence, they can call it in, and there are several of us, and many of us now, they're growing by leaps and bounds, verifiers who will go out, and we don't interfere with anything, you know, hopefully it's not going to be dangerous, but I guess there is that element.
Right.
And we video whatever information we can get, and then we return it to the operators who are waiting for us, who send out the announcements, and they post it on social media.
Yeah.
The theory behind it is that ICE doesn't like to be known in the area that they're in. And
Right.
with verifiers this way,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of false reports, they're just the police.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we don't want people to panic, but we also want them to pay attention.
Right.
So, is this kind of a form of addressing the shadow side, do you think, for me?
What I hear is that you have found a way to channel some of your hurt, your anger, your obvious attitude that's unjust and so on. You're channeling some of that energy into a potential creative path. And as the attitude with which you do it will be the most important thing, I think.
What do you mean?
I'm gonna try to find words. Please find words. I'm gonna try to find words. If the ICE movement carries with it a denial of one's own capacity for cruelty and inhumanity and injustice, it just turns out to be another cult.
How do you know if it's denial?
You would want, I'm asking you to do this work without denying that you too are no different from any of those ICE folks. You're not superior to them. You have the capacity to be as hurtful, as unconscious. So it's the attitude with which you do the work. And it sounds to me like you found a very healthy kind of response. I'm just holding up to all of us that, if my life, here's I'll take it back. I'll take it on myself. If my daily task is to wake up every morning and the first thing I do is to look at my screens trying to make a case against Donald Trump or ICE, that becomes my goal and my life's purpose, I don't think that's a good purpose. I think I've just fallen into the trap of being another form of shadow. I don't want to use the word cult because that's too. I just think it's the attitude with which we get out there on the streets and engage ICE people, and
I
they're
think
caught.
Yeah.
Caught.
I think I'm doing what you're saying, because I'm focusing on the people.
I think
When I
you-
see it, I just get
Yeah.
crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
just because of what's being done to them.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
Exactly. Yes. Keep doing it. Would be mine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you found an avenue to. A way to think about it also is that this current craziness that we're experiencing, it will end. It will end. It won't bring in the kingdom tomorrow. There'll be something else that emerges. Cults have a history of bad endings, really bad endings, and that's going to be our sadness. We don't know how much suffering and how much death and all that is going to be. It will end. And what we need to anticipate what's going to replace it. And I talk about that as practice in the future. We need a vision of where we're going. We need a vision of this new story. And we need this new story that we can put our energy toward, this interconnected, interdependent way of being, my word. And so what I need to be about each day for me is to practice the future that I can see. If I spend most of my energy railing at Trump every day, which is easy to do, then I'm wasting my energy, because he is not well, he's always in that web, and he has to create yet another chaos from the one yesterday, because internally he is so void of any kind of sense of self. He's a hollow person. He's close to having lost his soul. I can't, you know, I don't think any human being can say that about another person, finally, but he's very close. And, yes.
I'm curious your conversations with your kids, possibly grandkids if you have them or will have them,
Yeah.
and your thoughts and conversations with them regarding politics and how and all of this, the religion, all of it. That was one question I had. Another question I had is, just out of curiosity, when they say state your religion for you, how do you state your religion since you were a former pastor and now it's changed?
Right.
Do you leave it blank? Do you feel compelled to answer or?
I have several ways I dodge that question. But I also have several ways I directly responded. Happily, I raised 3 Democratic kids. That's good, because I don't have, a lot of people don't have that question. But I have other family members who are violently opposed to anything I would say. So I have to deal with that as well. And the way I deal with that is to in my better moments, I listen carefully to what they're saying, and I let them know that I've heard, and then I always ask permission. Well, I see that differently. I'd like to tell you how I see it. Sometimes they let me, sometimes they don't, but I have met my side of the contract. I think it's important that we speak up what we know, but we speak it up with an attitude, with a kind of attitude that conveys that we are part of the same humanity. If we lose our humanity, we're lost. So, let me see if I can sharpen what you said. Or what you asked. I probably can't. I think I've lost my train of thought. You could probably help me by.
I bring up these conversations with my son often because we moved from a very liberal area to a very conservative area.
Right.
And he's growing kind of up with more of that around him, and so and him and his steps of believing, I like to ask them questions. I like and the thing that's reflected back to me is so different than the older people in my life, and I try to ingest all of it and make sense of it in some way and find the humanity in all of them. And so many people I hear now say, I don't fit in just that box. I'm not just a conservative, not just a Democrat.
That's hopeful.
I could say I'm like this and you
Yeah.
put me in that box. I could say I like that and you put me in that box. So it doesn't serve them, and it doesn't seem like it's that they feel compelled to continue this division. I see it not working in front of them. So that provides me hope, and I try to ask them questions, and I just wondered for you, because you did say you had 3 children, and you have a conservative neighbor who you found controlling, but the sadness I see are families that won't speak to each other anymore, or
It's rampant.
neighbors.
And again, the guideline, everybody has to find their way through this maze. Morass. But I think it's imperative that we, speak the truth as we know it from our experience, and be open to hearing the other person, even though you disagree. And I think our kids are looking to us for some kind of wisdom, and whatever the wisdom, whatever it is, I think we need to tell them, even though My kids have not bought into the old religious paradigm. They were a preacher's kid, and frankly, it didn't take. That's only half true. They have a deep sense of their own values and compassion, and I'm glad for that. But in terms of church kinds of things, and that, they're not interested in that. I mean, part of that is they have to get some distance from their father who's always talking about these things.
So the blank.
Back there and then there. Yes. Barbara?
Yes, you said earlier you were gonna say a few things about prayer,
Yeah.
and I wonder if you could say it.
Okay, good. All right, I'll hold that just a minute. I will do that. Yes.
I was wondering if you're in a state of grief, having been part of this huge Christian community and seeing how easily it was corrupted by one person. Is that creating an overwhelming sense
Yes.
of grief, of loss, looking at your brothers and sisters and what they bought into?
Yeah, I've been grieving that for at least 45 years. And actually I write about that in my first book, the grief that, and the stages of grief I had to go to step off the back porch of the church, and what that cost. And, the denial of that for a long time, and then the bargaining and the depression and the whole deal.
But isn't it so much worse now because they've come so far even from what they were 10 years ago in terms of
Yeah.
corruption, I think.
I think our whole country's in grieving. Not just for the loss of a monotheistic myth, but all kinds of hopes for our country and so on. And it's not just those of my ilk. People who are part of the Trump tribe, let's say it that way, their anxiety to hold on power is as anxiety provoking as ours in trying to regain the power. It's a horrible place to be for any of us. Regardless of which team you're on. The anxiety that we're living with, the trauma that we're living with. Just think about the efforts to hold on to the power, and I think the implicit shame that keeps them there. They're going to have to face that maybe someday, the shame and the fear and all that. And we have our part of the shame as well. But grief I think our whole country, if not our whole world, are in various stages of grief right now because things are changing so rapidly. And, yeah. Yes?
Yeah. I just wanted to say something about myth making today. You said that the iOS is having a problem in terms of coming up with new myths. But actually, there are large numbers of new religions that come out. There are so many of them, there's a whole field within religious studies, which is the study of new religious movements. And what we look at are the modern myths. And these people are coming up with loads of myths. And a lot of them are linked with places around the world where we still have ideas of animism. We have the ideas of God within the world, not transcendent, immanent. The problem is that Jungians don't study them. So Jungians don't realize that there are these fertile myths coming up all the time. And the question is, what do people do with them? What do potential religious founders do when they've had a vision and they're not quite sure? What would you as a Jungian suggest?
Well, I would disagree with you. I think Jungians in general have been very interested in all the various myths. But the thing that I'm harping on, maybe that's the right word, there's no collective myth yet that honors what we now know about our physical, visible universe and our invisible universe.
Well, there is a whole field of eco-theology. And when we look at the writers in eco-theology, what they're trying to do is link together the sacred with the land.
Good.
So there are some traditions.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes I speak too far in one way. I'm glad for any kinds of movements like that. I'm happy about that. And I think it's part of a new kind of thing that's going to coalesce, and we will have at some point a new collective myth.
Yeah, people are working on it.
People are working on it, yes. Yeah. Okay, I have 2 minutes. One of the questions I often get is a question about, so in this new paradigm that I'm working on, what is the role of prayer? So, a couple years ago, after a retreat, a pilgrimage, someone asked me about that yet again, and here's what I wrote, and I found this again recently in my files, and I'm happy with this particular response. I'd like to read it. Said, "Good morning, Ellen. As I mentioned briefly at the retreat on Iona, your question about intercessory prayer is a very good one and deserves much time and attention. Here's a very brief perspective. While I no longer believe in God as an orbiting satellite in the sky, off whom we bounce our prayers, like a GPS signal, I do believe that prayer is one of the best ways we can be connected to the people for whom we pray. We are more connected than we can imagine, and prayer is a way to acknowledge that. We influence each other far more than we presently understand, and much research confirms that. To pray for someone says to them, and to the one who prays, that we are interconnected, interrelated, and our care and concern extends both ways. And, most importantly, prayer continues to change and transform the one who prays, because it is a way that the ego bows to that which is greater, by whatever name the latter is called. Jung's notion that we cannot be fully human unless or until we come to acknowledge our human limits and thus trust that which is greater, larger, and more mysterious. The one who prays for another, then, is better able to love the person for whom he or she is praying, both in word and deed. Last 3 sentences. The old notion that prayer is designed to appease God or to influence God's decisions is no longer tenable. Yet prayer remains one of the best means to love another and to activate the healing factors within both the one being prayed for and the one who prays. If the divine is within, ever so immediate and intimate, prayer is conversation with that part of ourself we call God's image. That gives me great comfort and hope. I would encourage you and me to pray more rather than less. I join you in your prayer for concern for your son and your friends' needs and family." That's an agenda to talk about a very important aspect of religious life. I have been told that the contract here with the Jung Society, with this beautiful facility and generous hospitality, ends at 7. I want to be true to that commitment, but I will hang around and converse with anybody who wants to. Last word. Anybody? You have a last word?
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Before we leave, our next event, which will be March 14th, will actually have at a different location. It will be at a Unity of Charleston on Leeds Avenue, North Charleston. So if you're on our mailing list, we will send that announcement. And if you're not on our mailing list, please feel free to leave us your email and we'll add you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.